All right, this is our beginner's guitar lesson. I think this is the second video, so here we go. What we're going to talk about today is right at the very beginning, what do you need to get started? And obviously, if you're going to learn to play the guitar, the first thing you need is a guitar. So we're going to cover a little bit of the types of guitars, what would work best for you, what's mostly within your budget. I mean, if you have a bunch of money, that's great, but most of us don't. Most of us have to find something that fits within our wallet, so to speak. So we'll start with one of my first guitars was this. This is a classical guitar. And the reason why I would recommend this for a lot of beginners is because they're just easier to play, easier to learn on. Also, if you live close to other people, the nylon strings are a little bit quieter, a little more muted. So, and another big thing is the nylon strings are easier on your fingers. And that matters when you're first starting out. I mean, you know, learning chords can be difficult when you haven't built calluses up on your fingers, and that will happen. You'll get calluses, your fingers will thicken up, but at first it's a lot of times hurts a bit. So steel strings are definitely harder on your fingers, and classical guitars are easier on them. Now this is quite an old guitar. This is a Franciscan, and this was purchased, oh God, I think in 1992. So it's an older guitar. I've played it a lot. This is the one I primarily learned on. But you can buy a Yamaha C40 is a standard classical guitar that runs for about 140, 150 bucks, I think, something like that. They're not terribly expensive. Or if you find one at a pawn shop or a used instrument store, you can go shopping around. But classical guitars are definitely good to learn on because, once again, they're just easier on your fingers. They're easier for a beginner to handle. They have a wider neck, and the strings are a little bit further apart, which actually makes it easier to accurately, you know, find the strings and hit them. It's a good starting point, but it's not the only option. If you want to learn on a steel string, I did a review on this a little bit ago. This is a Harley Benton model that's sold through Thoman's website, and it sounds nice. I like it. And it's not terribly expensive. This one was under $100 plus shipping. Even with shipping, you're 125, 130 bucks in on this guitar. So that's not too bad. And there are other beginners models of steel string guitars. You can go to a pawn shop, like I said, a used music store. You can try out. You can go to any guitar center, guitar store, try out pretty much any of the beginners guitars and see what feels right for you. And that could be one of the benefits of going to a store, is you can actually pick them up and feel them and get an idea for the actual feel of the instrument. But this model in particular is fairly inexpensive, and there are a lot of other inexpensive guitars out there that are quite good. I mean, at one time when you bought a cheap guitar, it was going to be hard to play, and they just, you know, anything below a certain price point wasn't very good. And nowadays, honestly, mostly because of Chinese manufacturing, there are a lot of really good guitars like this one that it's not that hard to play. It sounds really good. This would make a good beginner's guitar. If you want to get into electric guitar, you can always purchase something similar to this. Now, as you can tell, I got stickers all over it. This is another guitar that I bought used in the 90s. It's a Harmony, but anything like this would do just fine if you buy an electric guitar, right? And you can get them at pretty much any music store, pawn shop. You can find a decent used one. Most of the time you can find an electric guitar, like a halfway decent used instrument for, you know, sometimes even under $100, anywhere from 100 to 150 bucks. Shouldn't be too far out of, you know, reasonable expectations for just a basic guitar. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be any particular brand name. As long as it's playable and all the electronics work is the main thing. If you buy an electric guitar, you're going to need an amp. I have this one myself. This is a Crate practice amp. It's, as you can see, it's not terribly large. And, I mean, good Lord, I've had this thing for years, and it was cheap when I bought it. I bought it used. Something like this you could probably buy for 20 or 30 bucks. Even, you know, check out Craigslist or Amazon, or Amazon's probably good, but Facebook Marketplace, anything like that. See if anybody's selling something like this. Inexpensive amplifier. You don't need anything really great to learn on. Just as long as it works. That's the only real requirement. You will need a cord. One of these. 1/4-inch instrument cable to plug your electric guitar in if you go with an electric guitar. It's one of the reasons why I prefer acoustic guitars is you don't need all that. It's just the instrument. And of course, there are a couple things you'll need. You'll need picks. Picks are important. If you go to a music store, they might let you feel different picks and decide which ones you want. Some people prefer thicker ones, some people prefer thinner ones. I kind of change what pick I'm using depending on what I'm playing, but for starting out, it's not that important. Get a couple different thicknesses, they're not expensive, and try them out. You're going to need a tuner. A clip-on one like this. I've got a couple of those. Those are nice little tuners. Or you can get one like this that you set in front of you and has a microphone that picks it up, and this one has like a plug in the end. You can plug in an electric guitar to tune it, and those are quite good. The ones that clip on the headstock you can use on acoustic or electric, it doesn't matter. You definitely need a tuner. That's something you're going to want to purchase. Chord book. You're going to want to buy a book of chords. They're called chord books, and don't be intimidated. They're going to have a lot of chords in them and a lot of fancy ones and a lot of different nomenclature, but they should have the basic chords right up front. Every chord book has them. You're just standard, easy peasy chords, and that's where you're going to be starting out on. And the main reason to have a chord book is just so that you can reference it. You can look up different chords. It makes it really, really easy. They usually have a little diagram with the shows the guitar neck and has the little dots on it to show you where to finger it. Let me see if I have a book just right here. I have Everything Guitar Scales book, but that's pretty similar. You can see where it has, it's laid out where it just shows you little dots where you put your fingers. A scale book might be a good idea. A lot of times they have chords and scales in the same book, but ideally start out with chords. And the main reason why is that tends to be where people start out. You start out learning the basic chords so that you can play basic songs. You can learn enough to sing along or to write a song yourself, and that's a good beginner's spot for that. So as far as purchasing an instrument, find the one that works for you and your budget. It doesn't have to be fancy. Don't let anybody tell you you have to buy a particular brand or that you shouldn't buy a particular brand. Find the one you like. I've found that every brand of guitars has winners and, ones that ain't so great. There are particular ones that really are good for the price point. I'd say Harley Benton is a good one. Yamaha has some very cheap ones that are still very good. Harmony is very good, and of course there are all sorts of brands you'll find in used stores or pawn shops that you might have never heard of before, and they're perfectly fine. So anything you want to learn on, that's what you're going to learn on, right? Yeah, especially if it fits within your budget. If you're broke, like most of us don't have a lot of money to spend. You're not going to be buying a $2,000 or $3,000 guitar, but something inexpensive is just as good for you. And to be honest with you, you'd be honestly surprised how often musicians, high-level musicians, well-known ones, use inexpensive guitars because they like them. There are a lot of people that have owned the same guitar forever, and they like it. They like the way it sounds. It sounds good. There are some musicians, some very famous ones, that have been known for recording with very cheap instruments because they're looking for that sound, the particular sound that guitar makes. So certainly you might even find a diamond in the rough, something that's cheap that sounds really good. But as long as it sounds good to you, And as long as you're having fun with it, that's what matters. So don't break the bank. Don't kill yourself, don't wipe out your bank account buying a fancy guitar. There's no point to that, especially when you're first learning. I can see it if you get further along and you start doing it professionally and you want something really, really good that can stand up to, touring or playing on stage a lot. But that's not yet. We're talking beginner guitar. So I'd say check out some good websites to check out. Musician's Friend is good. What's some others? Toman, obviously. Sweetwater's another good one. You can go to a local guitar center or guitar store. I've purchased a lot of instruments at used instrument stores. For instance, if you're in the Pennsylvania, Maryland area, you might know where Bedford, Pennsylvania is. I go to the Bedford Banjo Shop every once in a while, and they've been awesome. And it's called the Bedford Banjo Shop, but they have all kinds of instruments. And I've bought a guitar there, I've bought a bass there, I've bought some other instruments and various odds and ends. But every area has a store like that little music store that has all kinds of stuff you've never seen before. And of course, they might even have some stuff that interests you even more than the guitar. You might go in there and find something that just blows your mind. So you guys, go out, buy yourself a guitar, and I'll see you in the next video, okay? Yeah. God bless you.